Hello again, and welcome to the St. Louis Blues Hockey Legends Podcast. Tom Calhoun here to shine a light on the stories of those instrumental in blues history. And many thanks to blues talented organist Jeremy Boyer for setting the stage with his keyboard magic. Visit him at Jabs Music on X. On this episode, we visit with one of the great enforcers hockey has ever seen. Anthony Rory Twist, born May 9, 1968, was selected by the Blues in the 9th round of the 1998 NHL entry draft. Known for his devastating punches, he battered many of the league's top enforcers during his career. Twister became a fan favorite because of his intimidating presence and high-end fighting ability during a time when hockey teams highly valued having someone who could take care of the rough stuff on their roster. The Legends Podcast is sponsored in part by the organization I work for in the summer months, the Gateway Grizzlies. I'll tell you more about their Tom Calhoun bobblehead night coming up in just a few weeks. But let's go to the meat on the burner, as the old professor used to say, and drop the puck with our next blues legend, the Twister. A little bit. Twister, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's we like to talk about the history of our legends first off, and if you would, give us a little background on your early life. I saw online where they credit your birth to Sherwood Park, Alberta, in the Edmonton area, but I know you grew up in the Prince George, BC area, right?
You are correct. So when playing junior in Saskatoon, when the NHL came to do the weight and the height and where you're from, of course, I filled that out. I put Sherwood Park just for giggles, and then and it followed me. The funny thing is, it followed me my whole career. I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I was Dad got transferred. He's an RCMP a Mountie, and he got transferred to Prince George. Spent the bulk of my teenage years in Prince George, and then moved to Kamloops, and hockey started from there.
Yeah. So tell us about your early life. I know, in doing a little research, you had some athletes in your backgrounds, your grandfather and your grandmother, and I don't know about your mom and dad, but athletics seem to be in your genetics.
Absolutely, Grandpa was a boxing champion, a heavyweight champion in Canada, and he had a boxing gym in Burnaby, British Columbia. Grandma was played pro field lacrosse, and she's in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and her nickname's Dirty Andy. So I guess it kind of follows.
How about mom and dad, brothers, sisters, any of that?
I've got a sister, 7 years my junior. Mom and dad are still alive, doing really well. I believe they're on a cruise in Florida at this point.
Wow.
Dad's a retired RCMP officer of 35 years or 34 years. And mom was an amazing domestic engineer.
Well, we all need those, that's for sure, and good for her. So what about current family? What's your current situation?
My current situation, I've got two children. They're 33 and 34. Engaged right now to my fiance, Jamie. And we'll be getting married next year in August. November. November.
Yeah, right, Twister.
Oh, well, I mean, it's still a year away. Well, memory will serve me better back then.
But congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So what about your early exposure to hockey? I saw where you played a lot, almost every night when you were a kid. The dads would set up rinks, just like a lot of Canadian dads, huh?
Well, I get in Prince George. Prince George is a very cold city. It's in the upper extremities of British Columbia. I mean, be all sincerity, you have to come out of the woods to hunt. It's so far up there. There was a pulp and paper industry, and it was cold. And I mean, we're not talking Quebec City cold, but we're talking cold all the same. So we could maintain ice rinks in the backyards. The dads had their ice rinks, and every dad was proud. You'd have the old laundry hangers with lights on them, and all the kids would come out in the street. You'd have hockey night in Canada at somebody's house, and the next night over the side, then somebody else's house, and in between we're playing street hockey 24/7, 352 or 56 a year.
Just the thing to do in Prince George, huh?
Well, I mean, everybody in the United States, they grow up with football and baseball, and there's not a bar, a club, or any place that you go to have lunch that's not playing 24 hockey. So it's 24/7 hockey all the way through. So it's not only is it ingrained in you, it's you're surrounded with it. You're absolutely flooded with it. So of course, that's why you get so many Canadian hockey players.
Yeah. And you're about the third guy I've had on the podcast that was born in Saskatoon. That's a pretty good breeding ground up there.
I'm going to tell you what, Saskatoon, Regina, Kamsack, Calvington, that whole surrounding area. If you want to start, picking who was tough, every Stu, where you have guys like, Dave Brown, Joey Kosher, Wendell Clark, Daryl Stanley, Chaser, myself, Kerry Clark. I mean, the list goes on for ages and ages. Uh, Darren Kimball played in PA in Regina. Stewie Grimson played in Regina. I mean, it was a very tough, that little area right there with Saskatoon and Regina. Excuse me. That was a pretty tough league right there in the Central.
Yeah, I got that impression from Chaser when I had him on back in November. That's quite the breeding ground. So I was looking at your stats from your junior days, and you had some pretty impressive numbers with the Prince George Spruce Kings. I guess about that time you figured out, hey, I might be pretty good at this hockey thing.
Well, I don't know if that was necessarily what I was thinking. You got to understand, I was playing as a 16-year-old in a tier two Peace Caribou Hockey League, which was just one step away from slap shot, and it was a pretty aggressive league. I mean, you were allowed to fight. You fight once, and it'd be you don't get kicked out, but you fought in the last 10 minutes of the game, you get the boot, and it was I fought a lot. I mean, I fought a lot in the first couple of years, scored some goals, and then realized, maybe fighting's a little more fun.
Did you take it that way, that it was a fun challenge for you?
Well, initially, I was disappointed that I wasn't able to play as much as I wanted to play. But then, know your niches and find your riches. And I accept the fact that I wasn't the greatest hockey player, couldn't stick handle worth a damn. But I did know one thing: I could keep myself from being a liability on the ice and be even more of a liability as a grocery stick on the bench.
Tony Twist with us, and I got a feeling there's some more gems coming around the corner here. So so when Chaser was on with me earlier, Twister, he said that you and he were essentially recruited by the Blues to come in and handle some of the rough stuff for the team. Other teams had tough guys that they had no answer for, and they came after you and Chaser to kind of be the policeman on the roster. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's not a problem. Chaser was picked up as a free agent. And I was drafted in that '88. We came to training camp, and we came to training camp with a mission, and that mission was to make a huge mark, a stain, if it may be, on the mark on the brains of St. Louis. So the training camp. I remember the first night of training camp, we're having a get together, a meeting up in the Holiday Inn in Clayton, and they've got a big cathedral looking place where we all come in. It's there's only 30 of us in it, but there's 300 seats, and each coach comes up and presents, talks a little about themselves and the direction of the team. And this was Brian Sutter's first year coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody wrapped through, and this was Brian Sutter's speech to all of us. Boys, lads, a couple of his two favorite words. Boys, lads, tomorrow's training camp. If you score goals, score goals. You're a goaltender, stop the puck. You're a defenseman, do your job. If you're a fighter, fight. And then he walked up there. So
Yeah.
we're getting onto the elevator, and the elevator's myself, Chaser, Todd Ewan, Perry Turnbull, and who else was on there? Anyway, I looked at Todd. I go, I guess you and I are going tonight. And Todd goes, I don't have to fight you. And I go, oh, yeah, you have to. You're going to have to fight us. And Chase was like, us? I mean, who's us? Who's we? And, after he's laughing, he goes, who's we? You got a mouse in your pocket? I said, oh, well, we'll take the thing. And we did. We made a splash. That very first game I went after Todd, and he did what he said he wasn't going to do, was fight me. And it was Brian Sutter who was the coach of the on that inter squad game, the first inter squad game that we had. And I said to Brian, I'm going to leave my stick, and my gloves and the helmet on the bench. And I went to center ice and did the chicken in the first training camp. Now you got to understand, there was nobody at the training camp. We had no spectators, 10, 15, 20. Second day of training camp, third day of training camp, you had to bring so many cans of food to donate to get into the rink. And then, come the fourth and fifth day of training camp, you couldn't get in to see an exhibition game. So we made our mark, because Chaser did the same thing. He went out and he knocked heads and did that. And, it's what I was there to do. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. And I've heard that chicken story a little bit before. That's pretty impressive stuff. So, so you make the team, but you don't stick around very long. The Blues traded you to Quebec in '91 for Darren Kimball, and he was an old sparring partner of yours. But that turned out to be a pretty good move for you. You were up there for 3 or 4 years and got to play some.
That was a great move for me. It was a fantastic move. I had an opportunity. I think I had the opportunity to stay up with St. Louis in that 89-90 season, or in the 89-90. Spent some time, some games up, sent me down to improve my game. My game was not good, and at that point they were switching. The Blues wanted me to go from a defenseman to a forward, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't have the stick handling skills that as D-man to handle that position, and I didn't have access to everybody in the ice. As a forward, I did. So after that trade, I went to Quebec as a defenseman and continued on as a defenseman throughout my career in Quebec, with the exception of the last 2 years, which turned me back over to a winger. So I was able to maintain a great hockey club too. By the way, that was the preliminary show to the Colorado Avalanche winning it. So they had a heck of a team after the trade with Lindros, and played with some fantastic players. And it allowed me to stay in the National Hockey League. Pierre Paget was a great coach technically. There was nothing, you couldn't pull wool on paper with him any day of the week. He had every stat. He knew what every team was going to do. But unfortunately, on the bench, Pierre didn't have all that much control. For some reason, all that paper and all that was going on his hand got scattered, and his back behind the bench skills were lacking. But I tell you, I had all the respect in the world for what he did for us and how we developed such a young team and were able to get where we were at.
I understand your first NHL game was an opening night at Chicago Stadium. You got a story about that one?
Well, interesting story to say the least. Chaser and I are both in the lineup, and it's Chicago. And the only thing that we were there to do was to stir it up, and the opportunity came. It was Chaser fighting Wayne Van Dorp. I got Dave Manson. It's the very first shift of the very first game in Chicago Stadium, and that was kind of a precedent-setting event where I can promise you people were looking for more, and we were too. I can promise you that we were pretty excited about that. An opportunity to do that it's amazing, especially the old Chicago Stadium. I mean, you can't compare. You can't hear yourself think during the anthem, and tears in your eyes. You're so excited.
So I want to take a brief time out here to tell you about the Gateway Grizzlies. They are always providing family fun at their baseball park in Sauget. It's Grizzlies Ballpark, and it means fun for the entire family. It's family-oriented, and that means the pricing is family-oriented, too. And they tell me they're going to do a Tom Calhoun bobblehead coming up on May the 16th. That's opening night of the upcoming Frontier League season. So I hope you'll make plans to be there and get yourself a Calhoun bobblehead. That's going to be quite the item for everybody's man cave, right? Go to GatewayGrizzlies.com and find out about the upcoming season schedule and all the wonderful promotional nights they have, including the greatest night in baseball. You don't want to miss that on Labor Day weekend. GatewayGrizzlies.com. So you become a free agent after the 93-94 season. So you missed out on that Shovel-Day-Cujo battle in 93 here in St. Louis. Chaser had some stories about that, and I've got a Bob Probert story on that one that just about everybody's heard. But you come back to the Blues as a free agent, and unlike some others, you had a pretty good relationship with Iron Mike Keenan, I understand.
Well, we had a great relationship for a couple reasons. When he called me to come back to St. Louis, he said, and I was a free agent, and he said, Tony, would you like to come back to St. Louis? Absolutely. And then he proceeded to ask a couple questions, and then his final question was, how many minutes in a hockey game? Well, how many minutes in a hockey game? What do you think?
Uh, well, I think the normal answer would be 60.
Sure, I said 60. That's what I thought was the astute assumption. But there's six players on the ice, one of them being a goaltender. 6 times 6 is 360 minutes in a hockey game.
Okay.
So he starts down from the goaltender. Goaltender's going to get 60. Now there's only 300. Your top two defensemen, they're going to log 25 each. Now you take the 50. Now you're down to 250, and
Yeah.
then your second pair of defensemen are going to take 20 minutes. He keeps going down the line, and we're into the fourth line now. And he said your fourth line is going to probably, depending on the situation of the game, your whole fourth line will probably play maybe 10 to 12 minutes. Divide that by 3, you probably got 3 to 4 minutes. Forgot about penalty killing and power play. So penalty kill by a couple of them. We're in negative minutes. Tony, what part of the game are you going to play in? I said, none of that. He goes, you're right. And he offered me a contract. The answer was, he was defining my job. My job was not as much to be a contributor on that end, but to contribute with the minutes that I played on the bench was every bit as important as the minutes that I played on the ice. And defining that role for me made it pretty darn simple. I could train accordingly, mindset accordingly, and obviously, wasn't allowed to be or could not be a liability on the ice. But when given the opportunity to be on the ice to maximize that opportunity, doesn't mean necessarily fight either. And Mike taught me that also. He said, just skating around and making your presence known is enough. In some games you got to force your will on somebody. But him and I got along well in that respect.
So you both understood what the expectations were, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh, his expectations had to be fulfilled by myself, meaning that there was no ifs, ands, or buts. And the conclusion of that, he goes, there will be nights that you may play 13 or 14 minutes. There may be. But that's not because that's your job. It's because somebody else failed their job and you're filling their boots when they sit on the bench. But don't think the next game that's going to be what's going to happen, because that's not your role allocation. Stay in your lane, Tony.
Go. So, Twister, when I started promoting earlier this week that you were going to be my next legend on the podcast, several people sent me photos of their favorite jersey. It's that twist jersey with the 18 on the back. And any significance to the number 18, or is that just what they happen to give you?
Well, a little story behind it. When I wanted 3 when I started with the Blues as a defenseman. That first year that Bobby Gassoff was retired. Sure. So I could not wear it in Peoria either. So that 3 went to a 6. And I had 6 in Peoria when I came back to the Blues. When I was playing in that season, I spent 36 or whatever games. I think I was wearing number 6, not 3, multiples of. And I went to Quebec 15. And when I came back, 3, 6, 9, 12. It's a multiple. 18 is a multiple of the 3. So I think 18 is a great number, and it's a good forward number. And a single digit not going to look good on me. I don't have the talent to hold a single digit, so I got to be in a double digit. Anything above 20 to me was not. Anything above 20, it had other connotations in my head, and 18 was perfect.
So several years with the Blues, and I don't know how long you might have played, but then this little motorcycle accident, I say little, there was nothing little about it, in 1999 happened, and I don't know how much you want to relive that, but you got messed up pretty badly there and almost didn't make it, right?
Yeah, they gave me a 10% chance of living in the hospital when they got me there. I was traveling down a street called Olive in St. Louis, and there's literally 6 lanes, 2 going this way, 2 coming the other way, and a turning lane right in the middle. And that turning lane was wide enough for 2 cars. It was 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening. There's no vehicles out whatsoever, zero. And I'm riding a hardtail chopper, ape hangers all the way up here, suicide shift. So I just hit, it just hit third gear, maybe doing 45 miles an hour. Guy pulled out. There was literally, when I say literally, there's nobody on the road. He stopped right in front of me, and I've got maybe 100 feet to make an adjustment. The bike's 11 feet long. Can't lay it down, or else I'm done. So I laid off the throttle and figured when I hit the side of the car, I hit the driver's side door, tried to fling myself over the handlebars. I was successful to do that, and I traveled about 50 or 60 feet. One somersault landed on my feet. Now you got to understand, I was the best shape of my life at that juncture. I mean, that was right, months before training camp. I had been training hard 2-3 times a day. I was probably 265 pounds, maybe 10 or 11% body fat. I was well conditioned that year. That was the year I was going to come in. Somebody was going to get hurt. Yeah, I mean, that was going to be the point. When I landed on my feet, my left knee gave out. My pelvis, the 2 ligaments in the front and the back broke, and I laid back and never lost consciousness, never hit my head, looking up in the sky going, that can't be that bad. I looked down and I got no pants. I'm completely naked. I got 3.5-inch leather belt on my pants, got caught on the ape hangers. A woman comes running over. You all right? I said, I don't think so. Could you cover me up? And I had a big hole in my knee. Well, the ambulance got there within minutes. They got me on a spine board, and they were putting in. They knew I was bleeding internally, so they're putting an IV in me. And at the same time, when they were putting the IV in my arm, they were pushing me into the ambulance. And the guy that pulled out in front of me was on a phone, the back of the ambulance. Some motorcyclist just hit me, and I'm screaming at him. What did you just say? And he put the phone down to my mouth. Can you hear him? Like mocking me. I'm strapped to a spine board. I reached up and started hitting him like this off the spine board. Now,
my goodness.
Oh, yeah. So the ambulance attendant had a pair of scissors. I grabbed the scissors. I grabbed the scissors with this hand, with my left, and I threw them down here, and I tried to stab him. But I couldn't because I was on the spine board. So I switched hands. Grabbed my right hand, and the ambulance attendant is doing his best to hold it back, and he can't. Then the officer came in, opened up the doors, his gun drawn, said, "Drop it."
I don't think anybody's heard that part of the story. Am I right?
That's how it happened.
Wow. Amazing. So you're in the hospital for what, a week or so? And
I was in a way more than that. I was in intensive care for a week. And the first 3 days were touch and go. And I was bleeding so much internally that if they had to open me up, there's a good opportunity they wouldn't be able to put the blood in as fast as it was coming out. Being in the shape that I was in was the only reason I lived. I should have had my femurs up by my lungs, and my body was strong. And 3 days of intensive care. It was a week before they could do the surgery because the swelling was so intense. And I got a plate in the front and the back of my pelvis because it's a floater like this. It's not connected bone solid. There's a ligament each side. And my knee had to get my knee redone. I broke a toe in my foot. And the worst thing though, to tell you the truth, was that I had severed the nerve from the bottom of my scrotum all the way to my spine. Now that nerve is what enables you to get hard. And so for 9 months, the doctor, 9 months, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no tweener, okay? So when the nerve's disconnected, the nerve's disconnected. It's got to grow back. It's got to digress a millimeter a day to the base, and then it grows back a millimeter a day back to its original position. I said, it's a guarantee, doc? He goes, oh, no, not at all. And I said, well, how would I know? He goes, it'll take about 8 or 9 months, and then you will know. I said, there'll be no indicators. He goes, no, it's disconnected. It's got to go backwards and grow back. He was right, about 8 or 9 months. I was like, no. I mean, not of all things, at 33 years old, that would have been a tough one. Oh, I lost your sound there, but this on pause for a second. I'm gonna plug this in. Maybe it's not enough power going through it. Can we do that? Or not? We have any choice because I can't hear you. Give me 1 second.
So, Twister, if I'm right, I seem to remember you talked about playing again even after that accident.
I talked about playing again, but it was that 2001, because by the time I was a year down at that time, 99, 2000, when I had the accident, that entire year to recuperate. Um, the game was making a change. There was definitely a change in the game. It was there was definitely more talent. I was getting more talent at number one, and the position that I held no longer. When I thinking 96 and 97, at one point we had Rudy Postcheck, Kelly Chase, Basil McRae, and Tony Twist in a lineup.
Yeah.
And there was games that all of us were in the lineup. And there was games when there was 3 and 2, and very rarely just one. And that quickly graduated from that 97, 98. From 97 up, it slowly that role was no longer a foursome, became a threesome, then a twosome. And by the year 2001, you had the talent of that role player was greatly improved. So the talent level that you had to possess to maintain the role was you had to be much better, and there was less of it. So at that point, I said, you know what, it's probably time.
Yeah. Well, would have been fun to see you back on the ice again, but what's best for you is the main thing there. Say, you wrote a foreword to the book, The Code, The Unwritten Rules of Fighting and Retaliation in the NHL. Long title, but it's appropriate. So you're a member of that brotherhood that existed for so long in hockey. Do you think that job was and maybe continues to be undervalued by the league and the owners? You guys were an important part of making money in those days.
I'll ask you one question. You can ask any owner, you can ask any NHL representative. In closed doors, they understand the value. In open doors, they won't admit it. You talk to any great player, Brett Hall. I played with Brett Hall, got the opportunity to play Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky was the first one to give accolades through the Edmonton years to get Dave Semenko, gave him the opportunity to shine.
He'll say that.
And he'll say that right away. Paulie says the same thing about myself and Chaser, given that opportunity to shine. Al McGinnis, one of the greatest quotes, I love it. He said, I'd rather have 19 players in a cardboard cutout of Tony Twist on the bench. The difference is that our performance wasn't always necessary, but it was very necessary every game. So it was a balance of power. You take advantage of one of our guys, I'm going to take advantage of one of yours. If you go after one of my good players, I'm going after one of yours. There's no doubt. There's no two ways about it. Might not break his ankle this time, but for sure that I will the next time. Eventually, the two guys that are the nuclear weapons will launch and they'll engage. But more often than not, being able to play honest, policing ourselves and play honest within the two teams. Being intimidating is not intimidating the other team. It's having the other team tell themselves. Like Guy Carbonneau said, whenever time they came into Quebec City, every time they came into Quebec City, boys, we're here to win the game. We're here to play hockey. Don't wake up the animal. And that was me. I may have got 2 shifts or 3 shifts in the entire game if I was lucky. But Carbo knew that if they screwed around, I was getting out there and somebody's going to get hurt. And I was coming after Carbo because he was their captain. So, again, there's the captain of the Montreal Canadiens telling his own team, just because I'm in the lineup, I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was sit on the bench. What is the value of that? The value is twofold. The other team's thinking about me, number one. anybody else the other team is thinking about, well, I can't take advantage of that player or run him or do something because he's going to go after one of my players and then me eventually. So it kept an honest game. Who do you want to see on the ice on a daily basis, on an evening basis? You want to see your best players. You want to see Wayne Gretzky, Brett Hall, Chris Pronger, Al McGinnis. You want to see those guys on the ice because those are your top performers. If you allow them to be in the game every game and give them just another second or two at the puck without the opportunity to get run from behind, and taking a cheap shot, well, you've not only improved the game itself for the fans, but you've also improved the longevity of that player. So is there value and is it undervalued? There's a value to it. And every player knows the value. Every NHL representative knows the value. But all depends how you spend the propaganda.
Right. Tony Twist, our guest. So, Twister, the enforcers in the league, a number of them from your era before and maybe a few after, have dealt with the effects of the job that they had to do. And some have died young, and, CTE and for other various reasons. Do you ever worry about the effects of that job and what it might have on you as you get to be an older man?
I haven't put any thought to that, and I have not felt, and be thankful that I haven't put any thought to that, and had to at any point thus far. Um, Obviously, it's not as impactful as being a boxer. I mean, in the ring, it's the punishing is much greater. Yeah,
Right.
can you argue though? Is it a fist that's going to hurt you the most, or is it going to be the boards, or you getting ran into the boards is going to hurt more? Well, I beg that the second one's going to hurt you a heck of a lot more. You got somebody traveling at 30 miles an hour, 2 foot from the boards, and you get hit. It's nothing like getting hit with a punch. You're taking a whole body slam. The opportunity for failure is large. Um, in the game that we played, as you talk about the enforcers, was I worried about that? Not once. When I was playing, never put any thought to it after because I did not suffer any of those after effects. But I look at a guy like Mike Peluso who played here in St. Louis, and when he came here, I had to talk. We had fought when I was in Quebec and he was in Jersey, and it was a one-sided fight, and I hit him 2 times, and it was not good. It was a two-toe drag off the ice, goes into the shower, and goes off the ice. And he's in our training room. That night he doesn't come back to the game. That night he showers 3 times, puts a suit on 3 times. That's after the game. And and then management makes them play. We're on a swing. They go to the island next, and he ends up fighting Ken Baumgartner. Well, he should have never been fighting. And there's a general manager who forced his hand on a young man who should have never been forced. He shouldn't have been playing. And as a consequence of putting him in those positions to fail and not succeed, Mike's suffering the rest of his life. And those are the instances where the league wants to bear down. Should have taken better care of the players. The general managers and the doctors should have done a better job. And I here in St. Louis, we had the best. If you got dinged or a concussion or even thought, you're not playing. But there was plenty of coaches and general managers and doctors that put guys on skates and when they shouldn't have been. Head injuries are nothing to be fooled around with. Obviously, a broken bone or a ligament here and there, or a sore shoulder and shooting up. That's normal. Or it wasn't my year, but the head injury's not.
So that's an interesting a discussion that could go on for a long time.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you think you would have a chance to be in the Blues Hall of Fame one day? I mean, there should be, in my estimation, at least some consideration given to you guys like yourself and Chaser and maybe Reed Lowe and some guys who did that sort of work.
Well, you got to define what a Hall of Famer is. The definition of a Hall of Famer under the
At least
present.
the Blues Hall of Fame.
Well, I mean, under the guise of what the Blues have done in prior years as a Hall of Fame, that definition of what we did, that doesn't pass the litmus test. So, unless it's accommodated with some additional facts that could be considered, we don't belong in that group.
Well, maybe they should change the requirements a little bit.
And I appreciate you starting that webpage and polling for us.
Well, I think there's a lot of fans out there who would get on that bandwagon.
I'm
Why not?
sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. And, with a couple other reasons, there was a lot of us that suffered head trauma, of course, and directly related to the job we did. But nobody ever talks about how many head injuries that we prevented because nobody was getting ran. Nobody's being taken advantage of. There wasn't a high stick. There wasn't somebody getting run from behind. The compromising positions, even though you're in it, we're not capitalized on. So look at it that way, and it's all of a sudden it's a completely different outlook on it.
Tony Twist, captain of the safety patrol there. All right. Well, I asked this Twister of all my guests on the podcast as we kind of wrap things up. I'll ask a few other things afterwards, but for this segment, I ask, what would you like people to remember about you? What is the Tony Twist legacy?
My legacy, what I would like for it to be, and I've strived really hard to achieve that, is what I did on the ice, the same team spirit and camaraderie and willingness to do anything for the 20 guys in the dressing room is the same thing I brought when I was out of in street clothes. Is it take a picture, sign an autograph, be more than committed to taking a picture with somebody. Bobby Plager was the king. There's my mentor when you talk about a guy that knew how to do and serve back to his community. If you go back, there's no Bob Plager pictures by himself. He made everybody stand with him. If there was a selfie, he was in it. There was no one-offs. You were with Bobby Plager. And, hundreds of thousands of pictures, everyone with a smile. Every time he went out, never a bad word. A legacy that, if you're not in a good mood, don't go out, because you've established yourself, in a city like St. Louis. There's opportunity that somebody will recognize you. You better be kind, and you better do, because guys that are 36 years old, 40 years old, I remember going to the games when you were playing. Well, you're 36 or 37. Well, yeah. And you do the math in your head. And that's a memory that this man's bringing up, and he knows the memory to a T. He can tell you what he was wearing, what he drove there that day, and what he had signed. How easy is that as a professional athlete not to complete something like that?
Twister, thanks so much for your time tonight. I do appreciate it, and I know the fans will enjoy some of the meat and potatoes that you brought to the table tonight. I do appreciate it so much, and all the best to you. And if there's anything we can do from our end of things, we're always glad to try to do it.
Well, when you get that website out and get all the information packets, and you start canvassing those polls to get, guys like myself and Chaser and all those tough guys back on into the Hall of Fame, just run it by me, and I'll give you a hand promoting it. I know you're spending a lot of time on it, so thank you.
I got to get on that committee first.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Tom, appreciate you having me on.
You bet, Twister. You're a legend, no doubt.
Well, I appreciate.
Thanks for being with me for another episode of the St. Louis Blues Hockey Legends Podcast. We'll have another legend coming up soon, so stay tuned to our social media for news on who that legend might be. Visit PAGuyTom.com or BluesHockeyLegends.com and sign up for our Legends email notifications. The Legends Podcast is also available on the Scoops Sports Network at scoopswithdannymac.com. Video of the podcast is published the Monday after the Friday release of the audio. As always, please like and share on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It all keeps the Legends Podcast alive and well. Tom Calhoun here saying thanks for being a fan, and let's go Blues!